Then suddenly he was gone. I saw a blur of motion in the dark and heard the rustling of some distant brush as something large pushed its way into the woods. But there was no other sign of the child. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Kat. In today's video we will continue the horror story from last week's video, and I'll make sure to add the link in the description below if you want to read it by yourself. Now, if you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and without any further ado, let's see what happens next. I hadn't thought about Ginny sometime until 3 nights ago. Matt was diagnosed with leukemia at 14 and was gone 2 years later. And in the 20 years since, I haven't seen or spoken to his family over a couple of times on the internet. And yet, 3 nights ago, as I sat cold and panicked on the side of a dark road, Matt's uncle and that story came flooding back to me. I'd been driving in the worst snow I'd ever seen, much less tried traveling through, when I felt my car starting to slip on the road for what felt like the 100th time. The snowstorm was unusual for where I live, and I didn't have snow tires or chains, but I was driving as slow and cautious as I thought the situation allowed. My wife was having contractions 3 hours away, and while I knew she'd already been checked in at the hospital, I wanted to be there as soon as I could get there safely. But I was an idiot. When the car hit a patch of ice, I overcorrected and slid off into a ditch. I was on a highway, but it was the middle of the night in a snowstorm, and I hadn't seen another car for at least half an hour. I tried to get the car back out on my own, but all that got me was wet and cold. Cursing, I called for a wrecker, finally getting one the third number I tried. They were coming, but it would be about 4 hours based on the weather, my location, and the calls ahead of me. Looking at the gas gauge, I decided to run the car for just 10 more minutes to build up some warm air and then sit in the dark for a while to conserve fuel. Shivering, I tried to call the hospital to check on my wife and get her message as to what had happened, but I couldn't get the call to go through. I had plenty of charge left, but where I'd had 3 bars just a few moments before, now I was down to 1 bar that flickered like a dying candle flame. As I watched, it went out a last time and then didn't return. Maybe if I turned it off and turned it back. Please let me in. I'm so cold. I let out a scream and looked over at the driver's side window. Staring in was a small boy, his dark eyes wide with pleading terror as they met mine. Please, mister, please let me in. I could see what looked like snot frozen on his upper lip, and his pale blue lips were trembling as he begged me for help. My God, how had he gotten out here? I needed to get him inside, turn on the car again, and then I suddenly had a distant memory spark in the recesses of my mind. The orange glow of a fire pit lighting Jean's face as he told us about something that hunted out in the cold and the dark. The liar. I looked back at the kid. This was ridiculous. That story wasn't possible, and this child was going to freeze to death if I didn't hurry up and do something. Yeah, he looked like he had a hooded jacket of some kind, but it was well below freezing out there, and if... Swallowing, I smiled at the pale little boy staring in. How did you get out there? The boy stared at me for a moment. My mom, she's got bad sugar and fell asleep. I couldn't wake her up. I went to get help, but He was crying, pressing a small hand against the glass. What the fuck was I waiting for? I unlocked the car, but I still hesitated to open the door. I thought back to the story Jim had told. The thing was called a liar because it had to lie. It just wanted to trick you, but if you asked the right question, you could see through it. Taking a deep breath, I looked away from the boy. What's your name? Matthew. People call me Matt. Please let me in. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, but when I looked up, the kid just looked worried and scared. Not like he just said the name of my dead childhood friend. It was a coincidence, and I had to stop this and help him. My hand was on the latch, but I still hesitated. If Jean's story was real, what kind of question would work? Are you a little boy, or a little human boy? The boy's eyebrows went up slightly. Yeah, of course. Wait, that was dumb. If he was lying, he'd say yes. If he was telling the truth, he'd say yes. So that didn't help. Okay. I was running out of time to waste on this. I could ask him if he wasn't a little boy, but it was the same question, wasn't it? If he was a little boy telling the truth, he'd say no. If he was a monster that had to lie, he'd also say no. Fuck me, I just needed to grow a spine and open the door. Please, I'm getting sleepy and it scares me. I'm so cold. Shuddering, I found the latch again, determined to finally open the door and let the boy in. Yet, in spite of that, I heard myself asking another question. You're not lying to me just to get me to open the door, are you? I hesitated at the latch, waiting for him to be confused by the oddly worded question or tell me no. Instead, there was a moment of silence, and when I looked up, I could see the boy's lips were pressed into a thin line. Yes. I frowned, taking my hand away again. Yes, you're not lying to me, or yes, you are. His lips began to tremble again. Please let me in, I'm so cold. I needed to think. Him saying yes could mean anything. It was more how he'd reacted, almost like he was angry at the sign of being caught. Still, that wasn't proof of anything. I needed to just... Are you outside my car right now? When I met his eyes this time, I thought they seemed darker, colder. What? Please let me in. I felt a thrill of fear skitter up my back. Answer my question, please. Are you outside my car right now? The boy's sniffling stopped as a hard, cruel smile curled up the corners of his mouth. No. Then suddenly, he was gone. I saw a blur of motion in the dark and heard the rustling of some distant brush as something large pushed its way into the woods. But there was no other sign of the child or any other intruder as I sat alone in the freezing dark. After a couple of minutes, I got a cell signal back and checked on Peggy. She was doing fine so far, and they'd passed along my message that I'd be there soon. An hour later, the wrecker arrived, and if the man thought it was odd that I refused to get out of my car as he pulled me free from the ditch, he didn't seem to mind. As I write this, I've just gotten back from holding our new baby. He's a healthy little boy, and after just 2 days I already love him so much. My wife asked if I wanted to name him Matthew, after my best friend growing up, but I shook my head quickly. After she's home and rested, I'll try to explain why. Besides, it doesn't matter what we call him. He'll grow up good and strong, and we'll be there to prepare him for a world that can be warm and wonderful, but also very strange and cold. A world where not everything is as it seems, and he has to be very careful, especially when inviting in a stranger from the dark. Thank you so much for watching. I had so much fun doing this. Please let me know in the comments if you believe that the story could be real or not. Also, please don't shy away from giving me feedback or things that I can improve on. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like the story and you want to see more of these. Bye guys!